What's good? God is good. I'm your host, Jay Did It. Welcome to Thursday Therapies, a podcast for all creatives, writers, rappers, poets, artists, activists, Sacramento Community Therapy Session. Today we have Kiii, a Sacramento native who grew up between worlds, finding his voice in music as early as 4. By age 16, he was shaping his sound and later pursued his passion at UCLA, minoring in music history. In 2016, he brought his most challenging chapter, grief, trauma, and self-discovery. After the passing of his grandfather, all while navigating through college life, relationships, and a world shaken by police brutality and social unrest. Through therapy and music, Kiii turned pain into purpose, creating albums as living time capsules, stories of identity, culture, and healing. His message to the world is embrace who you are, honor your feelings, and give yourself grace, because your idea of okay is enough. Thank you. Welcome to Thursday Therapies. Thank you for coming on. It's good to see you.
It's a blessing to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm glad we were able to cross paths, and I seen you out there doing your thing at Broderick's and a couple other places. It's amazing. You're amazing. Thank you for coming on the show once again. How's your week going?
It's going well. Very productive.
Yeah.
Sustaining.
Absolutely.
Lively. I'm grateful to be here right now and to be taking this moment in as well. So
dope.
Pretty well. How about yours?
It's great. It's great. I'm glad to be here with you. I'm glad to be in the building and just continue to bring awareness to mental health. As you know, Thursday Therapies is about mental health, and I just want to ask you questions and let the world know who you are, through your story, through your journey, through mental health and music.
Yeah, and I'm hoping people can gain from it as well. So
absolutely,
let's do it.
Absolutely. So we'll start with your childhood and your roots. What do you remember most about growing up in Sacramento and a split household?
Yeah, so I would say, from like the foundation of how I perceive music and like its value to me. My father was also an artist, a producer, a beat maker, and I remember like a lot of transactions he would make on his beats, selling like a beat for $800, $900. I would see like the cash and I'd be like, man, like this is crazy. But then I would also see him working on his music as well with like his Triton and, me kind of playing with the keys and making my first beat at 9 or, and then, my stepfather as well, he was an engineer, studio engineer for Digital Underground. And, I got to see firsthand like what the recording process looked like for a lot of like a plethora of artists, but also kind of got to get some kind of perspective of like the process of how they created. Obviously, this is the analog days where you had to kind of record with the tape. So it's a huge shift from a huge world shift from where I'm at now. But I think what I really remember most is just kind of those like highlighted moments, like me rapping at 4 years old, not even having or knowing the English language, but how rich the culture was within me and how much I wanted to like impress my father, as well as, those around me with something that I felt at the time might have been like my purpose, which I understand that changes for a lot of people. But for me, it's something that I've been able to sustain for quite some time from that point on. So I'd say it's been very prevalent, even just, my mom's influence on the music, from listening to Lauryn Hill or,
I love it.
Marvin Gaye and a plethora of other kind of artists, in the 80s, 90s, early 90s. And while she's vacuuming, that kind of thing. I think music has always kind of been surrounding me.
That's dope.
But, obviously in a split household, there's challenges of like time management. My parents were young when they had me. So I grew up with them, if you will, and that was a process, still is.
Yeah, I get it, because I feel the same way with me and my older daughter. Like we had to grow up together. But it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's definitely beautiful. Yeah. So how did those early family dynamics shape who you are today?
Well, I'd say it set like a tone. I have 9 siblings. So, like step whole, but they're all half technically, because my parents had me, they split, that was it, so I have like a lot to draw from, but I'm also the oldest. So, I was the guinea pig, first gen in college, first gen in a lot of different things. And that, it came with a lot of trial and error. It came with a lot of expectations, but it also came with even like some kind of, neglect, because I'm the oldest. So, the siblings look at me as, a certain kind of way, especially with the success accompanied with that. And there's assumptions made about, how healthy things are. But I was always raised in a family of, live your truth.
Yeah.
And we put all of our challenges out on the table as a family for all of us to kind of consume, understand, support each other through, but also learn from, as well as, nothing's perfect, and really being able to own your imperfections, and either through acceptance or through like making some adjustments.
That's dope. That's dope. So your family was really a team together, even though they split and separated, they still all worked together.
Along the way. It took up to college for both of my parents to really put their heads together to kind of make it work, but it wasn't easy.
Life be lifing.
Yeah,
life be lifing. So can you talk about your father or stepfather and the influence that they had on your upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, from what you'll hear in like Near Eternity, like I think that they had their own ways of like expressing care, of expressing support, and my dad's pretty like not as direct with guidance. I've learned a lot because we were all young. He had me at like 20, just like in their early 20s, and so because of that, there was not too much that they can teach me about the path that I was walking into outside of kind of learning and supporting. So I would say it's always been a supportive relationship that's been fostered, but really through kind of just keeping the most sustainable family structure intact, and kind of like me learning to appreciate that, because I grew up amongst a lot of peers and friends, close friends even, that didn't have what I had, and was able to see such a drastic difference of where they went and how much of value they provided along the way. But I don't think it's anything that I would have been able to truly appreciate as a child,
Wow.
But
yeah, that's dope. That's dope to even have that.
Yeah, and I'd say you wouldn't be getting the me that I am without any of my parents. I think that they've done tremendous work to get me to this position,
and they've done a great job. They've done a real great job.
Shout out to my parents.
Shout out to your parents.
Love
yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So how has that relationship impacted your view of manhood, masculinity, and mental health with both fathers?
So my mother, she is a powerful person. I don't even want to just put it in words of like, a strong woman, but just a powerful person, just like an anomaly in my world, and I think she's extremely accountable. I've always kind of associated masculinity with, living your truth, acceptance as well as accountability, and that's kind of how I've always viewed the value of masculinity, because you're going to be, you already have the, provide, that kind of thing, or there's a competitive side of being a man, and there's also like a kind of showing up and, kind of doubling down. But those are traits that I've learned even from a woman, of being able to like make things happen from nothing, and, being able to like transform, trauma to community service, transform pain to healing, transform certain emotions into things that can like affirm others, and I think being aware of that, as well as being aware of self, is a part of what I'd imagine a man is. But I think that's still a very societal construct that like is kind of up to the individual to determine. But I think for me, it's been almost unlearning, like kind of deconstructing what a man is, to actually know where my place is as one,
Absolutely. And I think that goes for a lot of people, is just what society expects a man to be, and then just you showing up as your true authentic self, no matter what. That's amazing. That's amazing. So, you started rapping at the age of 4.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first rhyme or moment you felt music was yours?
Yeah, I'd say when I was 9, my dad, I had mentioned like my dad had his Triton, and he had like the little sloppy disc that he would plug it into, and I wish I wish he still had that exact one where I
Oh,
made my
wow.
first beat in, but I'm I have a life of luxury to actually be able to archive a lot of my music
Yeah. Yeah.
from like 16 to now. So like I'm not complaining, but um, when I made my first beat, I just I saw how he reacted to that moment. It was a very proud moment at that time. My father stopped making music a little bit later down the line from that point, but that was one of those moments that I think you know the validation that we seek in our fathers is that's a very specific thing, whether we're a daughter or we're a son. I was able to see that in his
Wow.
eyes, see that in his reaction, for him to save the file and be like, man, this is hard, this is kind of hard. And I think that at least up until college, I was chasing that kind of high. That's
Mm.
kind of what my identity was becoming up until a certain point, to where that's just how powerful it actually was.
That's incredible. That's
Yeah.
incredible to hear. That's that you can even remember that.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah, that's a great moment. That's a great
yeah.
moment. So what pushed you to take music more seriously and start recording at the age of 16?
Yeah, so I had gotten to like a little scruff with somebody in one of the high schools I went to, and I was getting into like a lot of fights at the time because of the
Mm.
kind of environments I was in, and I really just think, the communication breakdowns with the cultures I was being thrown into, and I think it didn't really end until I went to Sac High,
Mm.
my last 2 years, which is obviously in Sacramento, and for me, there was just one big fight that I got into. It was so bad that my mom was just like, you need to kind of you need to figure out what you want to do. And I
Mm.
think from there, I had mentioned like rapper. I think maybe it might have started like that, and she was like, you need to own your rights. You don't want to sign to these labels. You want to have like your, and from that challenge, as I mentioned, my mom's very just a force. I'm like, you know what? I want to be a record label owner. And matter of fact, I want to go to NYU.
Okay.
And so they had like a program called T School of Arts. So that was what drove my value and respect for higher education, because I figured at a surface level, it would separate me from most rappers.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like my drive and motivation for those next 2 years of high school, which kind of made me take the art a little bit more seriously.
Okay. Wow, that's incredible. And your mom is very powerful.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yes.
This is 2010, or yeah, 2010, when nobody was really talking about record labels and
Yeah. Yeah, that's
that kind of
great.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, dream big.
yeah,
Yes, do it all.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, speaking of college years in transforming, how did UCLA and studying music history influence your artistic and artistry and the way you see music?
Yeah, I would say the the culture of UCLA and my place in UCLA wasn't really it just constantly taught me that I really wasn't supposed to be there.
Mm.
I think when I got in, like 90% of the students that applied to that school in 2011, um, 90% of them didn't get into the school.
Wow.
And that was just the total population of applicants.
Mm-hmm.
This is not to take into account being an African American or
Right.
African
Right.
American male. But when I got in, it was only 4% of us,
Yeah.
African American on the campus. So every day that I was there, I was basically trying to prove or affirm my existence, because I really wasn't supposed to be there,
Yeah.
let alone get my degree. And retention rates is like another
Very.
conversation on that campus, which I know it is what it is. We just
Right.
live in the world that we live in. But I was also balancing the arts. So, mind you, I had gotten into two schools, so well, more than two, but came down to two choices of
Right.
full ride at Berkeley due to some of the programs that they had at Sac High, or UCLA. And because of the music industry, I gravitated towards LA,
Right.
which they didn't have like streaming at the time. So I'm thinking it has to be LA,
Right.
and from there, you kind of develop this identity in Los Angeles about your idea of success. And I think for me, what that meant was that like I had made it in some way, but a part of that also came like survivor's guilt. So I
Yeah.
think being able to, from the time that I started college, I had dropped maybe 10 mixtapes by the time I finished.
Wow.
and like 2 EPs. This is when distro finally came out. You could drop music on
Yeah.
iTunes. So I got to see that shift from like, we're not using CDs anymore, and there was a lot of grief in me leaving home.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pride in, being able to like accept the loss and communicate my loss.
Yeah.
The many losses that I've had on that campus, as well as kind of staying on the ground, like being able to like stay grounded with midterms and then music. But
Yeah.
I'd say at some level I achieved some kind of success where, it was Daily Bruin or, making it to the front page of Daily Bruin or performing a lot on the campus that I think shaped how I understand the business as well as my place in the generational from like the traditional model of the music industry
Yeah.
to the kind of more online streaming thing. I think that kind of really transformed how I find my place in it,
Wow. Interesting. That is an interesting time to enter into the music scene because it just
Yeah.
blew up. Like you said, it just blew up out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I'm over here selling CDs, and they're
Yeah.
like, well, I'll buy it,
Yeah.
but I can't put it in my car anymore.
Right,
And
right.
we're all kind of using Spotify now. It
Yeah.
was like 2013. I started in 2012.
Yeah. Wow.
So, and like I said, my father was selling floppy disks
Yeah. Yeah.
for his
That's
beats,
crazy.
and I'm
Evolution
like, all
of
right,
music.
it was blog era too. So,
Yeah.
even now with TikTok era and all this, it's like, okay, there's a lot of adjusting that I'm like the middle
Yeah.
child here,
Yeah.
with
Yeah. That's
the
dope though. You
generations.
still
Yeah.
got a little taste of,
Yeah,
of history.
everything.
That's
Yeah.
dope. So, 2016 was such a heavy year for you. Can you share what the reason? Can you share of your loss and grief, how it felt after your grandfather passed away?
Yeah, because he was 99, an amazing person in his community of Sacramento.
Yeah.
Had a lot of respect from his community. Very strong man, if you will. This is 1917. Like
Wow.
he's seen a
Yeah.
lot. So
Yeah.
he was tough. I also think he didn't have to go. I think it was like more of a choice of integrity of it's his anatomy and being able to preserve it from how he passed. But I think me processing that loss really took some time because he was able to see the graduation, but I didn't get my degree until 2 years later.
Yeah.
2016 to 2018 was when I nailed down on my degree. So he got to see the graduation, but I don't think he fully understood because there was a bit of like memory kind of being impacted. That was one of the most beautiful moments I've ever experienced in my life was going out to eat after my graduation with him, my grandmother, my father, and my mom. Seeing them come together,
it's a surreal feeling
very
to have
surreal.
all your family there like that.
But then getting that loss and not really finishing my degree until 2 years later, it was like, I didn't know when I was going to get it, or, there's a bit of insecurity on if I actually would.
Yeah.
So, I was really struggling, with even the relationships that I had on the campus were kind of, everybody was locking in on their degree or out by that point.
Yeah.
So I think, I wasn't really able to accept the loss or the losses that I had at the time. It was just too many. And I didn't, some of them weren't like actual absolute losses either. So yeah, I think for me, it was just that year, then you had like the political climate of Trump jumping into office and, Philando Castile, Sandra Bland, a lot of like civil unrest, and what I'm studying on the campus as a music history minor and, some of the African-American study courses that I've taken, like, I'm like, okay, well, how far is this truly going to go for me? With what I've seen with our heroes from Angela Davis to W.B. Du Bois to, MLK, Malcolm, Huey Newton. Like, okay, I get that you look at the talented 10th, you look at like the people that have succeeded from all of this, and it felt more illusionary than it did like as like some kind of promise for a future about my peers or about Black culture as a whole. So I think I was also kind of wrestling with my place in the world as a black man on campus, but then also just, in Western culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot going on.
Yeah.
A lot of uncertainties.
Yeah.
For sure. So, how did therapy help you process not just your grief, but also your past traumas and college pressures?
I'd say initially, it didn't help on the campus as
Yeah.
much as I was maybe kind of open to. I did start getting therapy on campus. And, I think a bit of it there was some trauma there too. It was like a professor at the time who like was inquiring about like my records with my therapist at the time. So he's a bit nosy
Oh, wow.
about, he was very weird, very weird experience for me, where I felt like a part of my trust was impacted on like the, I guess the psychology industry, if you will.
Definitely.
And it wasn't on him, but it's just the fact that somebody could like actually dig,
Right.
and probe, and insinuate and like make, drastic assumptions about, I don't know, And so I'd say, those initial moments were more important for me. Like the value that I gathered from it was being able to hear my own voice.
Yeah.
Where for me at the time, I was just trying to process and map out the systems of, reality, whether that be managing financial aid department or accounting department or housing department, and kind of being homeless, navigating these different things where they're like, oh, well, we can't do nothing, but then, processing my relationships and my place, all these different things. Right. And then for somebody to, look at that as like what it felt like was like almost an experiment. Like it just is the best way I could put it. It's just you're asking questions that aren't really pulling at the emotional side. They're more like kind of logic based, which I think can kind of further spiral someone. So I think it helped me kind of find acceptance with that I didn't have answers. And then a year from there is when I actually started. My mom recommended a therapist, shout out to moms, and he was great at his work, because at that time I was receptive to it. And I knew that the help that I needed really came down to processing that experience on the campus, and processing how I was going to go back and get my degree. And when I did that, I think I was able to put some of those unsettled feelings to rest.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm glad you didn't give up. And shout out to mom again too for, helping out, because a lot of people fall through the cracks just based off, of their college experience and never end up returning.
Yeah. It changes people,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, the survivor's guilt there too,
Yeah,
plenty of people that I knew from there at that era of time that
Right.
like, went a different route.
Yeah. Went a completely different route.
Yeah.
So, what was the hardest truth you had to face about yourself during therapy?
I'd say hard as in the difficulty of being able to master what I needed out of the truth. Is like not like even now, I'm like logicizing my how I process things, kind of really looking at impact-centered communication, being able to affirm like how I'm feeling, prioritizing my feelings, understanding them, and then processing them outside of like, providing like a philosophy or a logical framework to things. I'm like very logical, if you will. A lot of people would say. So I think kind of siloing that or compartmentalizing that and accepting that like I may not have all the answers, but then like being at that point of acceptance that, we had talked about, and being able to name my emotions. I think that's become a lot more fun, but originally it was a lot more challenging to kind of grasp, as like the therapist would throw at me, like, how, not the typical, how does it make you feel kind of thing, but like, I have this thing with Western culture and the emotions that are outlined: happy, sad, angry. When I look at like systems and you say, are you mad at this? For me, it's like, well, that would be too simple of an answer. I think there's a bit of resentment, there's a bit of anguish, anxiety, but there's a bit of irony, so I might laugh in this.
Yeah.
But I also might, be a little bit more, it might be sobering. Some of these things are like that we learn about our government, that we learn about culture, the new things that are changing, bring up all kind of feelings.
Absolutely.
And you can be happy and sad at the same time. There's overlapping emotions, and being able to name them and understand maybe this is where that comes from.
Absolutely.
I think it's called integration. Is it IPS? Integration parental therapy. It's something like that, where you're kind of integrating your childhood into why and how you are, like almost your behavioral. Oh, IFS.
Yes.
IFS, that's what it's called. Yeah. So like kind of finding that integration of who you are, the different parts of you, like what part of you, what age of you is feeling that way right now.
Right, because your inner child is still in there. You still got to, you still got to protect that baby.
Yeah.
You still got to protect what's inside of you, and they still have feelings that they still don't understand.
Yeah.
Every moment.
And there's parts, I think the dopest part that I learned is like, especially over the past few years, there's a dope therapist I had, and he knows who he is. He'll know. But he would be like, there's parts of me at a certain point that helped me survive up to this point. And it's okay. Like, it's okay to accept that, like, that part of me came with flaws that may not no longer serve me. But there are some dope parts about me in the past that, like, helped me survive, helped me live, helped me, like, that I'm still using today. And being able to distinguish that, I wasn't perfect. I'll no longer do this, but, like, I can take this with me because this will work, is how I've kind of understood, like, my past.
And that's the dope thing about therapy, is because, you get to learn all these things about you, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, even though you went through challenges and some days were, better than others, it's okay, because we're human.
Yeah.
We're human, but we beat ourselves up so much. And if we don't know that, we could live in grief, and we can live in the negativity, a lot, and it can just affect the way we live for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
But it's okay to get help and learn about yourself. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that for you. You're digging deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how did the political climate and the rise on police brutality during those years affect your voice and your music?
Yeah, it made me angry.
Yeah. All of us were angry. We're still angry about it,
Yeah. I think now it's a bit of like, there's exhaustion there, but there's a bit of, there's numbness to it, but it's kind of more of like a meditative numbness, like, being present and whatever it is that I feel, me just acknowledging, it's very angering, but all right, like, I've been angry like this before. How do I channel this emotion? That might go through music. It might be through a bar.
Right.
It might be through like me kind of breaking down like a nuanced concept and being able to communicate it in one line.
Yeah.
That helps. Mostly it's being able to kind of deconstruct, like, if it is nuanced, like the value of how I can like give to those impacted by something that makes me angry, those that are really impacted, whether it be if you look at intersectionality women,
right,
or different marginalized groups, like I found like my gift in being able to capture and connect with those impacted by oppressive systems, and being able to kind of like combat it in my own way is like gave me like sustainability in tolerating a lot of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you have to put on your strong suit to be able to do that, but you have to also know about who you are and learn, what you can tolerate, because it'll eat you up.
100%. There's some things where I just got to turn off, unplug, and
absolutely,
there's a balance in that. There's a balance in that, so
definitely. So you describe your albums as chapter time capsules. Can you explain what that means and how you build those concepts? That's dope. That's dope.
I do, and I think and voila, and the album, like, that's very intentional, and like Drug Dealers and Time Machines is very intentional, of like, it's more imaginative there, but now it's more intentional in like my actual rooted experiences for this album. I'd say I've always kind of looked at it that way in perception, just because, those who know me, I have really good memory. If you were to ask me, hey, what were you doing last year in August on the 4th or 2018? Like, I would be able to tell you. And a lot of that is attributed to, how often I release music, especially at UCLA. Like, I dropped so many mixtapes, like, they were like chapters. That's the only way to kind of consolidate how I understand it is I can go back to those moments when I was making those songs, or like the feeling and the nostalgia of it. It does feel kind of like a time capsule. Like I'm able to go there and speak to it and have this relationship, and even now, like I do like audio logs, where I just capture my thoughts, and I might have a justification. Hey, like, in case you're wondering, this is why I'm doing this, and I hope that there's grace given, and then being able to listen to it 2 years later, like, okay, yeah, I get
That's dope.
why I made that decision. But I think in terms of music, like it's a bit more depth, because it's not just for me, and I'm learning like how to be able to affirm the listener, to affirm those who I think are listening, through my experience, whether that means they feel like me, or they understand the feeling through their own experiences,
Right.
or if they've never seen anyone like me, they can digest what they're hearing in a way that's simplified. So I think, even kind of reverse engineering, like I like reverse engineering now experiences. Like in Shaka Zulu, I talk about, how I would feel, as like a slave, if there was no freedom, and like kind of like how I would behave, like what my attitude is like, and just how defiant it is. And, Shaka Zulu was like, his reign ended 3 years after Nat Turner and the slave rebellion. So even being able to kind of speak to like what I would do in 1831 or like 1828, like it's just a dope concept of kind of re-engineering the narrative, if you will.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I've never heard anything like that. That's dope. That's dope. So, how do relationships, romantic, family, or friendships show up in your music?
Yeah. Yeah, my I'd say there are many lines that kind of pop out. Like I think in one of the records I had touched on, no, something to the effect of like I did this for my family without no snakes involved, right? And I think that was on Babylon. Like I did this for my family without no snakes involved. And I love that, because it's like true independence. It's like, even now in the home that I was able to fortunately purchase over the past year, providing that as like a safe space for my siblings when they're down and out. My mom's nonprofit organization, Classy, and like showing up for the youth in that sector as well, because I'm the executive director, but all of us as a family pull together for Classy,
That's
and for
dope.
the organization that it is. And it was such an understatement. Like I think when I can just, but it hit it, just like how I show up for my family, and like where my values are, and like me bragging about that, like me, like, man, like really showing up for my people without no snakes involved. We didn't need, the wrong people to make this happen. We didn't need the people that were out of alignment to show up this way for us to thrive as a family. But then also values in my relationship, as me being engaged. My partner inspires a lot about like my attitude on society, shaped a lot about the kind of man that I see myself becoming. And she's a powerful person, and so even looking at her story and how it's impacted me in a lot of different ways has made me see life, love differently, with a different kind of layer of like a different dimension, like another dimension of what love is, and being able to like put it to words and like own my vulnerability. I think that's been like the evolution of that initial idea into where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's dope. And congratulations about buying your house, and congratulations on your
Thank you.
engagement.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we talked about that when we were talking the other day. Is
Yeah.
that vulnerability is the new sexy?
I love that. I
It's
love
the new
that.
sexy.
I love
Yes.
that. It is a new
Shout
sexy.
out, shout out, Shanti.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's in her words. Being vulnerable is the new sexy for
Man, listen,
sure.
that needs to be like a mantra. A
Absolutely. It
mantra. Yeah.
does. It absolutely does for sure. So,
Mm-hmm.
you said music is like breathing to you. When did you first realize music was your lifeline?
Yeah, what I would say is most definitely is breathing to me. What I would say is it comes in waves, the realization of it. I think there was probably, it's just a very lighthearted moment, but me shooting videos with, when I shot Summer with 777 Cinema or 777 Cinema, my close friend Jay, we were going through Mount Diablo on these windy roads.
Mm.
And I'm like, man, like, this is a lot of, like, this is just my everyday, like, and I kind of was making like this distinction between, like, people that might not have art in their life, and kind of like, man, like, this is what my everyday looks like. And that's kind of when I realized, like, it's like showering to me. It's
Yeah.
like drinking
Yeah.
water. It's just like, it's like embedded in how I exist. Not like necessarily like a lifeline per se, but I would fight to be heard. Like, when I first started really understanding that I wanted to record, I would record like little audio clips on my little Nokia phone. I don't think it was Nokia. It was like a slide phone
Oh
around that time,
wow.
like 2008 or 9. And I would like send my voice recordings, and I would beat to like the desk and send it to all my contacts. And I think, like, that's when I look at moments like
Yeah.
that, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, clearly, even if I don't have a studio, like, I have this urge to record.
Yeah.
And it's like a release, like a catch and release now. It's like when I haven't wrote or recorded for like a month, and then I do record, or if it's more consistent, it's like one of those months where I come back to it, I have like 3, 4, or 5 songs ready to write.
That's
It's
dope.
like, okay, still
That's
got it.
dope.
Yeah.
You still got it.
Yeah.
It ain't going nowhere. That's
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's dope. So,
Hmm.
um, when you think about the younger version of yourself, what do you wish he could have heard from a father figure?
Hmm. Hmm. Um, I'd say to there's a bit of a it's like a balance, like, kind of, I don't know if I would instruct myself on how to achieve it, or like what would be important, but I would kind of want to know why it was important if it was told to me. But balancing between like gut instinct,
Mm.
intention, presence, and acceptance. I think that would be a good formula for me, like being able to balance accepting what I can't control, but also being present in my emotions of things that, like, I don't, you know, and kind of knowing how having that presence to navigate, or
Yeah.
taking a step back, but then also being intentional, like asking myself why I'm doing something, why I feel like
Yeah.
I'm the rapper that I am. Is it to impress my father? Is it because I want to empower the community as a
Yeah.
black man, and to be this powerful entity to resist this fictitious enemy?
Yeah.
Like, being more intentional, but defining what the intention is. I think asking myself why would have been like a really good. I would have ran with that a
That's
little
dope.
bit more. Yeah.
That's dope. You're gonna be a great father. I
Oh,
see it already. Look, you telling yourself that inner child, you definitely your
thank
children
you.
are gonna, you're
Thank
amazing.
you.
That's great. You dig
Mm,
deep. You dig deep in all that. That's great. Because I could use that too. Also, just finding that balance.
yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of us can, and we need that advice
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely, and be intentional about it too, with our true authentic self.
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bit of balance there,
Right.
right? Like, you might, like, I might need to bump my head.
Yeah.
So I might need to instinct move,
Yeah.
but then I might need to be present and
Absolutely.
like take a moment and like, hey, like, what am I not paying attention to right now?
Yeah.
Who am I not calling right now?
Right.
Am I avoiding anything?
There's a
Who
lot
do I need
going
to
on.
show up for right now?
Yeah.
Call my brother. Like, how are you doing?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
There's so much going on in the world. We can get lost by the
Yes.
worldly things and lose sight of who we are and what our intentions are on this earth.
Yeah.
For sure. Definitely. So how do you balance storytelling for yourself while still making music that connects universally?
And can you phrase that question again?
How do you balance storytelling for yourself while still making music that connects universally?
I love that question. Yeah. I would say, because I don't ever really lean into storytelling, not up to this point, like into Voila. Now I'm kind of like finding more authentic stories, but I think it took a little bit of vulnerability for me to do that.
Yeah.
And that's naturally what's creating the stories that you'll hear, that you are going to hear from me from this point on is, before it was like a shield, in 2016, when I was going through all of that, I think I had to tell myself that I was powerful and why I was powerful and what I wanted to feel, and I think now it's like, well, I feel powerful enough to tell this story, and still feel like it can't be used against me, or that like I'm living my truth. So I have nothing to run from, and it actually makes me more powerful to put my heart out on my sleeve, and still feel unfazed.
Yeah.
I think that's that's putting power to a story, but it's also allowing myself to affirm what others might be going through.
Absolutely.
And so I'm also able now to channel other people's stories because it's a little bit more empathetic viewpoints,
Right.
and like Near Eternity, it's like, understanding my father, and one of the lines, I'm like, I, not a man of many words, but when you talk, I hear the wisdom. It hurts to imagine the cost. It's like, he made a lot of mistakes, but like
Deep.
looking at it through his lens, it's like, nah, dude, like I learned so much from that, but then the value is that, I find the balance between accountability and acceptance. And I think that creates like that connection between me and people, that if I tell the story, somebody will resonate with it.
That's dope. I definitely resonated with it. I was thinking of my mom too, and it's just like, the challenges she went through, and it's just to know that, it was tough, it was challenging, but at the same time, I have to also understand that she had to deal with a lot of shit, so she did the best she could, and, I did. I was listening to that song, and that's what it made me think of my mom.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
That's dope. So what role does vulnerability play in your art and in your healing journey?
Yeah, now it's like it's a tool, it's like a tool in my toolkit to, set a tone, kind of set the stage of like the atmosphere of it. And I think I can associate it with like the chord progressions, associate it with like the tonal components of the song, the pacing, the BPM kind of helps me determine what I want to be vulnerable about. But a lot of the times it might be, vulnerability as a channel for me to convey the attitude about how I feel, and then from there comes maybe a story. But a lot of the times it's more of like an outlook, like I just kind of describe like attitudes, outlooks, frameworks. I try to break frameworks and communicate them as like a very lucid stream of like consciousness to different people, whether I'm talking to them about something that happened at the time, or it's never like just like, here guys, here's what happened.
Right.
It's like I might actually be talking to my friend while he's in jail waiting on his a potential prison sentence, or kind of fighting this case. That kind of thing, about reminiscing and him losing his mother and the grief that it feels to watch him go through that. but also communicating the uncertainty that he may never get out.
Right.
And also communicating that, like, at the least bit of it, I'll show up for your son, in moments where, you might feel limited or constrained, still got money on your phone, that kind of thing of just showing up. And I think the part of that is being a man in a way.
Yeah.
But more important, like a person with integrity that can put a microphone to those without a voice.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well said. Yes, definitely. Because then just based off of your explanation right now, I could feel it, and it just it grasps, the listener for sure, and puts them, like I'm sitting right next to you and talking while you're talking to your homeboy in prison. Like I could feel that.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that vulnerability, and it just is, heartfelt.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's dope. That's dope. So, toxic masculinity is something that you speak out against. What message do you want young men listening to your music to walk away with?
I'd say authenticity is like a beautiful tool to not only affirm yourself, but affirm others. And, how we define what masculinity is in the Western world, I think is like the destruction of mankind. I think it's the destruction of our women. I think in Black culture, it's the destruction of our cultures.
Yeah.
Whether it be genres of music like hip hop, or it be in our own homes. I believe there's a little bit of accountability, but I also think there's a little bit of acceptance and grace that we have to give ourselves as men.
Yeah.
Where if you deny that, then you're denying your very own existence.
Right.
And when I say acceptance, I mean like acceptance of your emotional states, acceptance of your flaws, your imperfections, as well as, and we can't necessarily say who we are.
Right.
It's not over yet. We're still here. That story is yet to be told. But, what you stand on and what you stand for, I think is important to own, whether it's good or bad. And if you owning up to the dirt that you've done, snitching culture, all of these things are like, quite toxic because,
Absolutely.
we're, there's just a lot of irony in some of these spaces that like kind of contradict each other, but it also puts our communities and our people in harm's way when we choose to deny our true being, which, we are more than just men. We're more than just women. When I write letters for my mother on her birthdays and stuff, it's, I'm proud of the person you're becoming. It's not like I'm like, I love you because you're my mom, there's that, but it's watching her go through her journey is a very individual journey, and being able to see that is important to acknowledge. And I think a lot of us as men, we don't really have spaces like this, or, we hear different ideas about what therapy is in general. And we like, nah, I'm supposed to, even in other cultures, ethnic cultures that, and in the Asian community, they
Absolutely.
First gen out in this country, I know they don't do therapy.
Not at all.
First gen, they don't. Right. And, even in Black families, it's taboo because there's a lot of dysfunction there, and it's a lot of like
trust
what you want to come out, and so it can't drive or force people to accept what's in them, but I think it's worth kind of defining for yourself what manhood is before you kind of start absorbing. There's a lot of unlearning that we all have to do as men.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely.
Of course, yeah.
We need to hear that. Everybody needs to hear that. Definitely, and it's okay. It's okay to get help. We're trying to break that cycle and, stop the stigma and let people know it's all right.
Yeah.
It's okay to get help. So, looking back, what would you tell your younger self who was just starting to record music?
I would say just be much more intentional, very similar to the previous question. But I think if I could consider the spiritual implications a little bit more about what's driving my intentions at the time, of like what's the end result here
Yeah.
you know, how does this impact my relationship with the higher power, right? And uh, is this in alignment with my path?
Yeah.
Um, if I would have asked myself that a little bit more, I'd probably be able to avoid a little bit more resentment about the
Mm.
music industry. But that would have more than likely been the thing that I would have found most value in, outside of like the logistics and
Yeah.
marketing and the shifting of everything. Really intention
Yeah.
from the spiritual side of it. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
What legacy do you hope that your music and your story will leave behind?
Yeah. I say it in When Gods Leave Earth, you know, like, um, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I pray my words outlive the priests here, you know, in the trees here, in the seas, even when another form of life choose to breathe here, you know, it's like, I think what legacy is a lot of times we look at like, okay, our children, you know, and
Right.
that is important. But in this day and age, it's like the population decreasing, you know,
Right.
my generation, millennials, zillennials, and Gen Zers, they're not having children as early as previous generations. And I think it's becoming a little bit more uncertain.
Yeah.
And so I look at legacy as like being able to it might be vain right now. I might have to ask myself why 2 years from now, like
Mm.
why that is. But I think right now it's okay enough for me to keep going with why I do what I do. But for whatever it is, you know, I want the frameworks that I provide, you know, to outlive these systems of oppression. Like that's kind of my battle is like,
Yeah.
how do I get this to exist?
Yeah.
You know, when there's no longer anyone here, and even like, you know, in some Afrofuturism type
Right.
shit, you know, like the aliens come and then, you know,
Yeah.
because we're so stuck in our ways as humans, you know, that, you know, breaking the frameworks, I think is kind of what I'm speaking to a lot of
Yeah.
the times.
That's deep.
And yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, time capsules, that kind of thing, it all
Absolutely.
kind of it
Yes.
fits in a way, you know?
Yes. Leaving it. Message
Yeah,
in a bottle for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely. That's dope. That's dope. So, for listeners who might be struggling with grief, identity, or self acceptance, what would you say to them right now?
You know, I'm sorry for your loss. And I think that's whether it's a family member, whether it's a partner that you had, or it's a previous self that you thought you knew, or a previous relationship with a person that you thought you knew.
Mm.
You know, I'm sorry for your loss. And I think, you know, only you know what the value of that loss is, but also understand that like you can't really quantify it. Um, you know, and being able to accept that for
Yeah.
what it is. And I kind of have an inverse of it of, you know, looking at it as a gain. You know, there was this, it was another grandfather of mine. He had passed away a year and a half ago.
Mm.
My stepfather's father, amazing man, also
Wow.
a pillar in the community, just dope man, you know. And in his funeral, one of the pastors had said something. He was like, you know, he had talked about like the human life as like a withdrawal, like
Mm.
you're going to the bank and withdrawing, and
Yeah.
like, you know, we go to the bank, we put
Yeah.
money in the bank account, and you know, we come back and withdraw, and like there's value in that money when it's sitting in the bank. My grandfather, you know, and the value he provided for his community was God depositing,
Yeah.
and you know, going to have to withdraw at some point, you know.
Absolutely.
And I think putting it in that kind of framework was like, man, there's like it's sorry, you know, sorry for your loss, but like if it really hurt, that shows the degree of how much of a gain that person was
Yeah.
in your life. And I think
Wow.
looking at it from that lens, it's like, okay, how do I look at this from a gratitude standpoint?
Yeah.
What was gained from this relationship that'll have you going for quite some time? But I also understand that like, you know, therapy alone won't solve it, depending on like intersectionality, the different challenges that are there, whether
Right.
you're like you have diagnoses,
Yeah.
you're on the spectrum. You therapy alone might not fully address the scope of challenges you have,
Right.
and there aren't answers for
Right.
everything. And if you could accept that, and accept the path while you're here to achieve like acceptance, like full acceptance about
Yeah.
who you are and why you're here, and
Yeah.
only you determine that, I think you're in a really good place.
Yeah.
And I think you can rewrite a lot of narratives.
Absolutely. It's done every day.
Yeah.
It's done every day.
Every day. Yeah.
You know, we're sitting here right now doing it,
Yeah.
you know, breaking chains.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Thank
Of
you so
course.
much. Let's switch gears. Let's switch it up
Yeah,
a little
let's do
bit.
it. Yeah.
You got some music. You got some music out there.
Yeah.
I was listening at your album, and it's deep. You really got me listening and thinking, and you know, it's bringing up stuff inside of me. But let's listen to it and see what the viewers got to say about it.
Let's do it. Yeah. Let's do it for sure.
This is my first time doing this part, so
This is super cool.
It's
Yeah,
cool.
I like this
I
part.
want to.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah,
always
yeah.
wanted to do this and put the music on, but I just never did it yet.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You got a great story.
The first day I saw you touch them keys, I was amazed for many days, like, who is he? I put my own spin to it, a spitting image of my father. They would look at me and say, so life is a toddler, you ain't have it easy. I knew love could hurt sometimes, and you would teach me. Not a man of many words, but when you talk, I hear the wisdom. It hurts to imagine the cost. The time slipping away. It's strange how we easily give it all up. The feeling the doubt consumes like we ain't doing enough. My step pops taught me how to mix. It was the early 2000s. Married my minds and guided my sound. Born in the Bay, your best friend still to stay. Gave me his album and told me to play. I found gold, and none of y'all had to sell a soul. Was never perfect, of course, but what a role. Black man, I love you so much, you never know. If I become half of what you are, then witness growth. I owe it just to show the world, cause ain't a damn thing greater than the stories that we tell. God willing, may the blood prevail, cause I know plenty that won't see me fail. It's not a man who could say they made. No, cause in the end, I'm the only one that's here to save. Protected by the cold, walking on the path of recompense. No, I often wonder if this world I leave, from my unborn seed to see the light in me. My imperfections, I suppose I know the flaw it brings. Ain't nothing promised if you hear you started off a dream. Treat that woman with respect, don't be afraid to cry. I know it hurts, but it kills when it's kept inside. Now dry your eyes and pray the streets don't become your God. I know this money make the ugliest people at times. What I gain from the pressure is to know your worth. I pray the seeds that I leave are rooted in this earth. Seen too many generations of our people hurt. We all have the need to lean on when shit get worse. Used to disguise my pain with a crooked smile. I pray no man never have a hold on your crown. Every day is more certain of your future now, cause I'm afraid of bringing life into this world, child.
I know I gotta embrace what come next now. Whatever it take, I gotta step now. I done came too far to not have conviction. Do you really think I need your permission? To the end of time, time is divine. I know I can't control it. This was the path I molded.
It's not a man who can say they made. No, cause in the end, I'm the only one that's here to save. Protected by the cold, walking on the path of recompense. No.
That was dope. That was deep. That was dope. I just heard you talking to yourself in so many different like timelines, you know, as a child, talking to yourself as a child, talking to your unborn child, you know, it's just so deep, and you're so calculated with everything you say.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
Thank you.
That is
Thank you for the
amazing.
listen.
So
Yeah, yeah.
explain your process to this.
Yeah, I'd say, you know, shout out to Stevie Crooks. Like we were having a conversation.
Shout out Stevie Crooks.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were having a conversation. We were talking about like, you know, we were talking about culture, a plethora of things. We just be yapping, you know, and we're talking about like what we find value in from our relationships. And, you know, I think we were talking about like the influence of like my my uncle, who's like a close friend to my father, and their influence on me as a rapper. And he was like, man, that sounds like a song right there.
Okay.
You know, and I thought about just like what that meant to me. And, you know, when I got to the middle of the verse, it was like, man, this is I want to really pay homage to black men. I know we have like Dear Mama, you know, we have records that like pay and I got plenty of songs from my mom.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, there aren't any songs that are just like big up in black men.
I love that.
And from a vulnerability standpoint, you know, like not like, you know, praising the qualities that maybe I might not represent, but the qualities that really made me the man that I am today. And you get kind of like a tidbit of that in like the first verse.
Yeah.
And then from there, I kind of like flipped it on its head, you know, on like wanting to speak to the future generation, but like the lineage, you know, passing that from this downwards, you know, and it's kind of just like my authentic feelings. Like I don't really have like a timeline on when I'm going to have children. Like I've spent quite some time preparing for it, you know, but, you know, what I would say, and like, you know, although it's uncertain, you may not be here, you still count. Like at the end is like still kind of owning something that's like not seen, but still honoring it, but also honoring that legacy that, you know, we had obviously talked about before, but this is more of the present moment of where I'm at. And you know, just vulnerability, I think. Being able to look at my father and like, yeah, you know, you guys weren't perfect at all, of course, but like damn, you know, there's so much value I get from, you know, you not even saying a word, you know, me kind of learning. And that's kind of the style of how they taught me, you know, is they really didn't say too much. They weren't as direct as maybe I would be as a parent, but that was their style. Yeah. And their style led to a lot of value that I was able to pull, you know, that I think I want to speak to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, no, I love that song. I love it. And it's just, it's just the eye opener, you know, for a lot of black men. And it's just like, it's okay. You know, it's a gentle, kind, loving song, but it's you so raw and real. And, you know, we go through challenges every day, you know, but that vulnerability, I hear it in there. You know, it's okay. You know, I know it hurts to cry, but it's okay to cry.
Yeah. You know, not being in denial, you know, because it kills when it's kept inside. It's like,
kills.
Look.
Yeah.
If we're going to, you know, warn someone about the dangers of life, look, that should really bottling it up. I've seen people explode and throw away their lives.
Right. And still, and still I hear that, like, you know, you're still kind of sheltering yourself from even wanting to have a child, because it's just like the world is so effed up, you know. I don't even know if I want to bring a child into this world. And you know, that's that bit of uncertainty, you know, even for, you know, considering my partner, you know, just kind of what world we're going to bring, you know, get into, what kind of, how that puts a tax on the mother, right? You know, because my mom had 5 kids, so, you know, for us to even have 1 or 2 is a lot in this day and age. It's just so much now than what it was when I was a kid. And so I think being cognizant of that and having like a piece of what I would say to it is also equally important. But absolutely.
Yeah. And then, you know, shout out to the producer, Jarelli.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout him
out. Beautiful piece of production. And he's got like a few other ones with me. And I love how soulful the record is.
And who was singing? Who was doing the singing?
I think he's from Brazil.
Yeah.
I ran into him a few months ago, but he's in the crates. Okay, you know, he's in the crates. And like, you know, a lot of his records resemble the sound and feeling that I'm going for.
I love it.
And then my sister was in that bridge section as well. So, you know, shout out to my sister. You know, as I know she's still finding her place in music as well. But like we have an amazing chemistry, us going through that entire section and, you know, being intentional with the messaging of it as it's near eternity, you know, on the album, and how she kind of spoke to it. But also that voice, because she comes from the church. Yeah. She's a choir baby. Beautiful. So she can float. Like very soulful. I love it. I love that. I love that. Well, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it. Do you have any upcoming shows going on? Shows, I would say, if you just pay close attention to my social media, especially like Instagram, my website, I'll for sure promote promote the shows. I know I have a release event for the album on the 6th of December. And there might be some shows that I'm doing with Culture Circle, which is, I believe, October 23rd. There's one in November, and there's one in December as well. So I'll be pretty busy, but what I would say is just pay close attention to the rollout of the album, voila, because there's going to be a lot of shows, pop-outs.
What is your IG and Facebook and?
Yeah, all of my social media is The One Kiii. That's K and 3 I's. And it's all across the board. The website, theonekiii.com.
I love that.
Et cetera. Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you for being on here. Like, comment, subscribe. Check yourself. Check your mental health.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
No, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This was a blessing. Beautiful. And I love your story. And, you got a lot going on for yourself. I see it. It's a wonderful thing.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.